So, how's everybody doing? Good, good. Thank you, Patrick, for the introduction and for everything you do here on the campus. Are the panelists still in here? I think they left, but I just wanted to thank them for having the courage to speak up here in front of all you. That's very difficult when you're going through something like, struggling with a mental health disorder. So I just want to applaud them again for their courage to come up here. But I'm here to talk to you a little bit about my story. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm an Iraq War veteran. I graduated high school in 2002, June 2002, and in August I was in basic training. I had a strong military influence from my grandfather. He was a World War II veteran. He helped raise me for a good portion of my life. And he just really instilled that sense of service and duty to country. I remember every morning he would go out and he would put the flag up and he would salute it. And every day when the sun went down, he would retire the colors and he would salute them. And I would help him fold it, and he would just talk to me about the importance of it, about the sacrifices that were made to have our country, to be the free country that we are now. And it just really stuck out in my mind. And you guys hear me? I guess I gotta switch it up. But after the events of September 11th, that pretty much solidified my decision to join the military. I'm sure you can all remember where you were. I was a senior in high school at the time. I was in my third period English class, watching it on my TV screen, and just feeling a sense of total vulnerability and anger. I felt that we were under attack, and I felt that there was nothing I was doing about it at the time, and so that was really the catalyst towards me joining the military. I qualified for a lot of different jobs, but I wanted to do the infantry. I remember sitting with my recruiter, and he was saying, you qualify for 190 out of 212 different jobs, and you want to join the infantry. He's like, "Are you sure? Do you know what that is?" I said, "Yes, I do. I want to push myself." And that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to test myself. I wanted to see what I was made of, and I wanted to prove myself. Basic training was a complete culture shock. It was the first time I was ever away from home. I know some of you in this room can relate to that. Just that feeling of unfamiliarity. You don't know anyone. You're not in a comfortable space. You're away from your home, and in the military it's a little bit more severe because they're yelling at you constantly, and the objective is to make it uncomfortable for you. So it was a hard transition, but I sucked it up and I made it through basic. I was sent to Germany as my duty station. I don't know how many of you have been there, but as an 18-year-old kid, Germany is a pretty awesome place because the drinking age is 16 there. And you can go out and do whatever you want, pretty much. I spent a lot of my time traveling. I saw a lot of different cities, a lot of different countries over there. When I look back on my military service, my fondest memories, most of them were from that period of time, just being able to travel with my friends, building those relationships, having those experiences. It was really beneficial to my life at that point. I was privileged to be able to experience that. So I thank the military for that. I was in for about a year. I was driving Bradleys, which is their big mechanized tank vehicles. They're a whole lot of fun to drive. It's like an off-road vehicle on crack, basically. You just drive through everything in the woods. I mean, water 5 feet deep. You can go up hills like this, drive right through trees. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. But I got the opportunity to try out for a sniper section within our unit. It was a very elite squad. There was only 10 of them out of about 800 soldiers. And the only way you could get into it was you had to be selected. And so I was selected in this squad because I had a very high track record of high physical fitness scores, I did really well on my entrance test, so I had the intelligence side of it. And after I got into the squad, I was sent to training, and it was an international training program. So I was training with snipers from Denmark, from Italy, from the German Army, from Special Forces in the United States military. And it was a pretty awesome experience. It was the best class that I'd been to in the entire military. I learned more in that 4 weeks than I learned, pretty much the whole time I was in the military. Just, the sniper is, our job is primarily reconnaissance, but they tend to look for people who are more independently thinking because they want to be able to give you a mission and you have to determine the best way to execute it, because it's a very, very dangerous job. Since you work in small teams, you don't have a lot of support. And I came to learn the realization of that fact when I was in Iraq. I was sent to Iraq in February of 2004. We got there about 10 months after the invasion had started. This was right about the time when the insurgency started to heat up. When it really started was around this time in Iraq. And when we got there was a unit that was in place, and they had been there since the invasion. And so they were totally burned out. They wanted to go home. That was their only objective. They were ready to leave. And what you do over there is they kind of take you around and they show you what to look out for, where to go, how to react in different circumstances. Basically, they try to tell you how to survive over there because they had been there for the past few months. And so we did this for about a week, and we had a change of command ceremony where our unit officially took over this sector of Tikrit. Tikrit, by the way, was Saddam Hussein's hometown. It was, the majority of the town was people loyal to Saddam. They were extended family members, high-ranking military officials, his Republican Guard, which were the Iraqi version of Special Forces. That was the primary residence of that town. So needless to say, it was not a friendly place for American soldiers. And at the conclusion of the ceremony, one of my good friends from Germany and my old company commander were in a Humvee, and they were driving across the city. And at this point, this was early on in the war, so we didn't have any armor. We had a Humvee with no door, no roof, totally exposed. We were sitting on the tailgate most of the time. And so the Humvee's going across the city. And it's an urban environment. It's a dense urban environment. The houses are all connected. It's tight quarters. The streets are narrow. And they're driving down the road, and their vehicle was hit with an improvised explosive device. And for those of you who don't know what that is, what the enemy had done was they had taken 2 artillery shells, which are about this big, probably about 90 pounds each, of solid explosives, and they wired them together, and they had wired it to a detonator. And as they put it in a pile of garbage, and as the truck drove past the pile of garbage, they pushed a button and detonated it. The blast was so severe that my company commander was killed almost instantly, and my good friend was hit in his artery in his leg, and there was really nothing that they could do to stop the bleeding. So he basically bled to death crying for his mom. And all they could do was try to comfort him. And this was the first 7 days that we were there. So just having that type of exposure to that type of violence, that type of sudden death so soon in the deployment was a lot to process. I had every emotion going through my body. I was immensely sad. I was extremely angry at the people who did it. I was terrified because all I could think about was I have 51 more weeks left in this place. I was homesick. I wanted to go home. I didn't want to be in that situation anymore, but you don't have a choice when you're over there. You have to suck it up and move on. And a few hours after that, there were patrols out looking for the people who did it. We did missions every single day. Sometimes it would be 24 hours, 48 hours. We primarily did observation posts, and what we would do is we would wait till the sun went down, and we had a little area where we could get out of our gate unseen, because the enemy used to sit at the front gate with cell phones, and they would call as soon as you leave, and they would have a network of people that could track where you're going throughout the city. And so we would sneak out, stay in the shadows. We would, it was myself and 2 other people, most of my missions that I went on. We would get up onto a rooftop, and we would try to stay out of sight. We'd go roof to roof. We would get in alleys. We would try to stay in the wadis. Anything you could do to stay undetected. Sometimes you can't avoid it. People see you. You hear them talking. You hear them yelling. You see them getting on their cell phone. You don't know who they're calling. It's a very, very scary situation to be out there with just 3 guys in the middle of an enemy-held city. You don't know who the enemy is. They don't wear uniforms. Just imagine going out on camp, in the campus center. You have all these people going about their business, going to class, reading, shopping, whatever they're doing, driving around. And somewhere out there, there is a group of people who are heavily armed. They have the element of surprise. They speak the language. They know the area a lot better than you, and they know the culture a lot better than you, and they're trying to kill you. So all you can really do is try to find them before they find you, try to detect the IEDs before they go off, or try to react when you get attacked. And hopefully you're okay, and hopefully you make it out of there. We would do OPs, and I would be stepping over people while they're sleeping on the roof. It's a very, very tense situation. You never know, what truck it's going to be. You don't know if there's an IED in a pile of garbage. You don't know if a pothole is a regular pothole, or is there a mine in that pothole. You don't know when you're stopped, does a sniper have me in his sights? Is there someone with an RPG aimed at my vehicle right now? You don't know. You're constantly scanning, you're constantly alert. And when you get back to the base after a mission, you can't decompress. The base that we lived on, we got hit with indirect fire, which is mortars and rockets, 186 days straight. So even when you're on the base, you have to wear all your gear. You have to be mindful of where you're walking and what you're doing, because at any moment a bomb could fall out of the sky and kill you. There was 13 of us living in a 10 by 14 bedroom. Everyone's on a different schedule. The light was on the whole year. The TV was on. People were going in and out the whole year. There was no outlet. There was no alcohol allowed. There was no females anywhere. I mean, just imagine going a year without even hearing the voice of a female. I mean, it got to the point where when we would hear one on the radio, we would just crowd around like, ooh, she sounds good. I mean, it was a desperate situation. You could lift weights. So you're just in this environment of just hyper masculinity. Everyone there was angry. It was 120 degrees. Everyone's lifting weights. There's no girls around. There's no alcohol allowed. You can't leave the base. You can talk on the phone, but it rarely worked because it was like a pretty poor satellite connection. And it was just completely miserable. I mean, it was the longest, most miserable, terrifying year of my whole life. And the only way that I could really deal with it was to take it mission by mission, day by day. We would get our mission in the morning, we would plan it out, and we would execute it to the best of our ability. And when we made it back, that was a good day. We made it back and no one got hurt. That was a great day. And it was just day after day like this. You know, you lose track of time, you lose track of everything. You know, it's almost like time stops when you're over there. I didn't know what was going on in the U.S. You know, movies, pop culture, any gossip, whatever. You're just totally isolated over there. You know, when I had the opportunity to call home, you know, all I wanted to do was just hear my parents' voice, you know, just to make me feel connected. Yeah, I just wanted to feel connected because I was so detached from society in that point. It was very, very hard to deal with. You know, you're on Facebook, or, well, at the time we had MySpace, because this was in 2004, but, you know, you're on MySpace and you're sitting in all your body armor, and it's 120 degrees, and you're sweating, and you're angry, and, you know, you're looking at your friends' pages, and they're at the beach, you know, they're at a party, having fun, you know, traveling around, just enjoying their lives, and it just used to make me so angry. You know, I was on a mission one day, and this is a pretty standard OP, and we moved in about 4 o'clock in the morning, and when it was still dark, we set up. We were in an abandoned hotel, and we were overwatching a street that was called RPG Alley because there had been so many attacks with rocket-propelled grenades that's what we nicknamed the street. And we were looking for an enemy. We were looking for enemy combatants. We were looking for people that were setting up IEDs all day long. And we didn't see anybody, and when it started getting dark, we got the orders to come back in. And so we got our plan together. You know, how are we going to get back? What route are we going to take? Who's going to cover what, when? You know, how is this all going to work? You plan everything. You try to minimize any type of risk that you may face. And so we started moving back, and we're going, you know, through backyards, over roofs, trying to stay out of sight. And we get to an area where we couldn't cross any further. It was impassable. And we had to get out on the street. And so we get out on the street, and there's people that are picking up their kids and running. They're getting in their car, peeling out, you know, scurrying. And this is a really bad sign over there because the civilians, the citizens over there, you know, they know when the enemy's in the area, and they try to get out of there because they don't want to get caught in whatever's about to happen. You know, they don't want to get caught in a crossfire and a bombing, so they try to get out of there. And I just remember seeing that, and I just had that gut feeling of something bad is about to happen. And I looked over to my right, and I saw these 2 little kids, and they were sitting on a curb, and their eyes were just huge. They had just this terrified look in their face, like they were looking at some kind of monster. And I took about 5 more steps, and it felt like somebody ran up and tried to kick my leg out, like a slide tackle. And then I just heard boom, 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 boom. And that's when I realized that I was caught in the middle of an ambush. What the enemy had done was there was a wall, about this high, concrete wall, and we were on the sidewalk. And on the other side of the street, there was a bunch of abandoned shops, stores, storefronts, and they had waited until we were in the middle of the wall where there was really nowhere to run but in 2 dimensions. And they opened up on us with AK-47s. The first volley hit me in my leg, and once I realized what was going on, I didn't even have a thought. My body was automatically moving, and I just remember I was running, and the whole time I was running, it was just bullets. I could see them hitting the wall next to me. I could feel the concrete going in my mouth. I could feel the heat from the bullets passing by me. You know, I could see the sparks as they were ricocheting off the concrete and off of the wall. And I just remember the whole time I was running, I was like, this is it. I was like, this is how it's going to end for me. I'm going to die on this sidewalk in Iraq. And I just had this immense feeling of terror. It was completely just all-consuming terror. And I was just running for my life. And all I could think about was that I don't want to die. I can't die here. You know, I'm so young. I got so much stuff I want to do still. And I just kept my eye on the corner and just kept going. And, you know, I knew that something was wrong because my leg wasn't working properly. I had a limp going, but I didn't feel any pain at all. The adrenaline was coursing so hard that I didn't feel anything for about 20 minutes. I made it around the corner, and I just remember standing there, and I was in a complete just state of shock. I didn't even really process what had just happened. I was, looking at my buddy like, dude, I think I just got shot. He was like, really? I was like, yeah, man, look at my leg. I pointed to it, he's like, yeah, you did, man, you did. I was like, well, what do we do now? He's like, well, we gotta fix it, And so, I remember right after it happened, they were still shooting at us when we were around the corner. And there was an Iraqi man, and he opened up his gate, and he was like, come in. And he opened his gate up, and he let us in there, and he locked it. And, I laid down, and they started to treat me. They put a tourniquet on my leg, and I was picked up by our quick reaction force, which it's a small unit that stays out in the sector at all times, just in case things like this happen and people need backup or people need extraction. And so I just remember they picked me up, and they threw me on the back of a Humvee, like in the bed of it, basically, and I'm just, it was just so surreal. It was such a surreal experience. It was 1 minute I was fine, feeling invincible, and the next minute I was running for my life. And I just remember laying in the back of the Humvee, and I'm on my back, and there's a guy standing over me with a gun, and he's like, you're okay, you'll be okay. And, I couldn't believe what had just happened. It was just, I had this feeling of invincibility, that you develop over there. When you see other people get hurt, or you go through experiences where you should have been hurt or killed and you weren't, it builds up this confidence in you. And I felt that I would be untouchable. I was 19 years old. I was in the best shape of my life. I was the most focused I had ever been in my entire life. Because, you don't have a choice. You have to be focused. And after that happened, it pretty much just shattered my entire perspective on life. It shattered everything in my life. It was the most terrifying thing that ever happened. I'd never been in a traumatic situation like that. And, I remember they sent me over to the field hospital, and they're working on my leg, and the doctors are, they're coming up to me and they're asking me all these questions like, what's your favorite number? What was your number in baseball? What's your birthday? This, that, and the other. And they're laughing and they're pointing. I'm like, hey, what's so funny, guys? And they're like, you're one of the luckiest people we've seen in here. And I was like, well, please elaborate. Because I don't feel so lucky right now. And he went on to tell me that the bullet that hit me in my leg had went in the back of my calf. It had went between the tibia and the fibula. Came out the front, didn't hit any bones at all. The space that passed through was only big enough for a bullet of that exact caliber to fit through. And I had another bullet that grazed my hand. So half of a bullet grazing me in a full sprint through a hail of gunfire. I used to think about it a lot, of why I'm here. Why did I make it? My company commander he was one of the best soldiers in our unit. He was a West Point graduate. He was extremely intelligent. He was strong, kind, amazing soldier. He didn't make it. I used to just think about this stuff all the time. Why them? Why did I make it? Why did I get hit? Why was I even in Iraq? I just had all these different thoughts. The military, in their infinite wisdom, decided that since it didn't hit my bone, that I was able to return to duty. And so they kept me in Iraq. I stayed in Iraq for the last 4 months of my deployment. I worked in the radio room from 8 at night till 8 in the morning. for about 3 months while I did my rehabilitation, and I couldn't stand it. It was one of the worst things ever, because I was sitting there in a chair, in a cast, crutches, and I'm listening to everything that's going on out there. I'm listening to all the attacks. I'm listening to my friends checking in out there, and I couldn't do anything about it. I just had to sit there. I started my physical therapy over there. For those of you who have gone through physical therapy, you know that it's pretty horrible. It's extremely painful, demanding. I hated every session. I used to compare my physical therapist to a legal form of torture. But I was in an appointment one day, and he said, I want you to go talk to somebody in the mental health office. We have an office here on our base. I want you to go see him. So I said, okay. So I left, went home, totally blew it off. Went back to my room, played video games. Came back the next day. He's like, how did it go? The mental health appointment. I was like, all right. He's like, yeah. Tell me about it. He's like, yeah, well, we talked about what happened and stuff. He's like, that's funny, because I called them. And then he said, you never showed up. He's like, first off, don't ever lie to me again, or you're going to be in serious trouble. And then he said, if you don't go, I'm not going to treat you. And so I go there that day, and I walk into this office, and it's really nice. It's nice couches, there's big TVs in there, it's air conditioned. This jolly guy comes out, hey buddy, how's it going? And talking to me. I'm just like, what the hell does this guy know about anything? He's been sitting here in his air conditioned office the entire deployment. How is he going to help me? How is he going to even understand what I went through? And so I just said the exact bare minimum to get out of there. And he said, do you want to come back? I said, nope, I'm good. I'm happy that I survived, and I'm ready to move on. And he said, fair enough. About a month left of my deployment, I decided that I was going to go back out on missions. And I did this because I didn't want to let what happened to me define the rest of my life. I didn't want to have that nagging in my mind, or that, always questioning what could have happened if I did go back out, or why didn't I? Was I scared? I'm not gonna let them beat me. That was the mentality I had. The first mission that I was back out, we got shot at again. And I completely froze. I was curled up into the fetal position in the back of the Humvee and trying to shove my head into the corner to get as much cover as possible. And I was totally frozen in fear. My face was flush white, my eyes were totally dilated, and I was basically incoherent, talking. And, not even that stopped me. And I finished my deployment, and I got back to Germany, and it almost felt like the entire experience of Iraq was just one long, crazy nightmare. Because here we all were. We were back in our base, back in our old rooms. We had all just gone through it. And there was no need to talk about it. There was no need to focus on that stuff, because we all understood what had just happened. And all we wanted to do was move on with our lives. We wanted to go back to just having fun, traveling Europe, just trying to pretend like it never had happened. And it worked great for months. I spent 6 months in the military before I got out. And I was like, I'm doing all right. I'm good. I was like, I'm going to get out. I'm going to go back to New Jersey, and I'm going to enjoy my life as a civilian, because I'm done with the military. And, when I got back home, it was like I rode this wave of emotions. I was just so elated, just overwhelming excitement. And, everyone all my friends from high school, my my cousins, my family, they just, all they want to do is take you out. They want to, let's go out, get drinks, let's go do this. They were just so excited to see you because I had been gone for years. And it had been so traumatic for my family as well. When I got shot, the Pentagon called my house and they said, are you, the parent or guardian of Brian Adams, Specialist, U.S. Army? Gave her my whole unit, where I was, yes. He said he was in an ambush today and he was shot twice and we don't have any further information. I said, we'll update you when we hear more. And for 14 hours, they had no idea where I was, if I was even alive. All my relatives were coming over my house. It was traumatic for them also. The entire deployment, they were just had an ever-present feeling of anxiety of not knowing where I was or if I was safe, or if I would make it home. It affected everyone. And so everyone was just so happy that I got back. And, I rode this wave of emotion for a couple months. And then, things started to shift. I would be by myself in my room and I would just be thinking about everything that happened. I would think about all the negative experiences. I would dwell on them. It would consume my mind. I couldn't shut it off. It was just nonstop. I would think about it. When I would try to sleep at night, it was just like a slideshow going through my head. Sounds, sights, triggering all these different emotions that I had suppressed for a year. I was extremely angry. I would go from 0 to 100 in a split second. It was like the anger was just right there under the surface at all times. And the slightest little thing would trigger just this huge wave of emotion that I couldn't control myself. One of the few things that helped me was drinking, was getting wasted. Because, for those of you in here that drink, you understand, that when you're wasted, you don't really care about much. It's a good time, regardless. And, this was my way of coping with things. And I always thought that, if I went to this party or if I went to this concert or if I, went on this camping trip, everything would be fine. This would all go away and I would be happy and I could move on. And it never worked. I would be happy for a little while, a couple hours, and I would be right back there again with myself and my emotions and thoughts, and it became overwhelming. I would pace around my house because I couldn't sit still. I would just go around and drive around in my car just to be moving somewhere and doing something, seeing something different. And I just had so many just negative thoughts, which I had feelings of guilt from, me surviving, other people not surviving, just all these different emotions. And there was no way I could really express it, how I felt, because I felt that no one could understand what I was going through. And so I kept it all inside. I started to not even tell people that I was in the military because I didn't even want to have that conversation. I just tried to pretend like it would just go away. And, nothing worked for me. Nothing worked. I had a couple of incidents where I got in some trouble. And there was some, alcohol-related things. And my mom was, basically sat me down and said, if you don't change what you're doing and the way you're acting, you're not going to live the next couple of years. And it was just, it was pretty shocking to hear that from my mom. I never really thought of things like that. I never looked at it like that. And so my reaction to that was, well, screw you guys. I'm out of here. And I decided to move. I decided that was going to fix me. And so I moved a couple states away to Massachusetts, and I moved in with somebody that I had served in Iraq with. This is someone that was one of my close friends in the Army. I traveled with him, I lived with him for a while. And when I got there, everything was right again. It was like that first feeling when I got back to Germany. There was that understanding there. I didn't have to explain anything. I didn't have to tell him anything. We got each other. And things were great, for a while. He persuaded me to go to college. I started at a community college, and I absolutely hated it. I dropped out after one semester. I would go to class, and I would sit in the back. I wouldn't participate, wouldn't contribute to anything. Try to do the bare minimum for work. I would get assignments, and it would take me like 3 or 4 times as long to complete them because I couldn't focus. I'd be staring at this theoretical assignment from some reading, in an English class that I could give 2 craps about. And I just had no ambition. I would hear people in class and they would be whining about, I have to write a 1-page paper, or throwing a fit about how their coffee wasn't hot enough or they made their drink wrong. And it was like the end of the world for them. And in my mind, I was just like, are you serious? I just could not relate. I could not relate to anyone. And I was just, I was like, I made a mistake. This isn't going to work out for me. I went to an appointment one day at the VA hospital up in Boston. And I'm in the lobby, and there was a woman there that was, handling paperwork. Basically a secretary type role. And I get into the office, and she's like, what are you in here for? I said, I want to get a checkup on my leg, yada, yada, yada. She said, okay, next available appointment is going to be 45 to 60 days. And I was just like, what? And I launched into this rant, and I covered everything. The military, Iraq, the government, America. I just brought it all. I went full circle on her. And I was raising my voice, and I was making people uncomfortable to the point where they were leaving the office. And so she said, I'm looking at your paperwork here, and it says you were a sniper in the Army. You were shot over in Iraq. She's like, I think you may have some residual issues. I said, yeah, my leg hurts. Why? That's what I'm here for, and you're not helping me. And she went on to say, I don't mean physical. She said, I want to show you something. And she took me around to a room, and I go in the room, and there's a couple guys in there that are my age. There's a couple guys that are older. And I knew they were veterans because they had, camo on. They had all these pins on. The one guy had a hat that said Vietnam veteran. And I'm in there, I'm like, oh God, what do these guys want to talk about? And I'm sitting in the back, not participating as usual. And I hear them start talking, and they're talking about the anger they feel, about how they feel like they can't connect to anyone, about how they can't sleep at night. I learned that some of them were in Iraq the same time I was. Some of the same, types of missions that I did. And it was kind of a revelation in my life. Because after I came out of that room, when she came and got me, she had told me that it was a group therapy session that I had just sat in. And she gave me a bunch of information about post-traumatic stress disorder, what it was, what the symptoms are, just general overviews. And she said, I want you to look at this stuff and go home and think about it. I had heard the term before, the PTSD, and I just had never associated it with my life and what was going on with my life. It goes back to that feeling of I always thought that things would get better, that I could pull myself through it. That military, just tough it out attitude. Don't show weakness, just suck it up and drive on. And, it wasn't working for me. And I took the paperwork home and I read through it, and they had all these check boxes on there. And I pretty much satisfied everyone to the point where I probably could have wrote stuff in there that they weren't aware of. And I just remember that night I called my mom and I was like, hey Mom, how's it going? I was in the hospital today. She's like, huh? I said, no, nothing serious. But I got some information and I was reading it, and I think I might have post-traumatic stress disorder. And she was like, oh my God, thank you. And she let out this sigh of relief like no other. And she went on to tell me how pretty much everyone in my family knew it. They were strategizing on how they were going to approach me about it. How they were going to bring it up in conversations and try to steer me towards that outcome. And, before that point in time, I never really associated it. This was the first time I really had some type of label to put on the way that I was feeling. And, I also saw that I wasn't the only person that was going through this. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a normal reaction to an abnormal circumstance. Seeing all the other people that were dealing with it, how many other veterans were affected, and it really just helped me get some type of direction in my life. Having that label, have something to work towards, and I dedicated myself to my treatment. I was put on medications for sleep, anti-anxiety, anti-depression, going to therapy sessions as often as possible. I'm trying to cut back on all the negative coping mechanisms that I was using with the alcohol, and just, it just covered everything. Every interaction I had in life after that moment was, I funneled it through the lens of how is this going to affect my mental health? How is this going to affect my mood negatively, positively? Is this a positive coping mechanism? Is this a negative one? Am I viewing things realistically in this situation? I tried to look at everything differently. And I got to a point in my treatment after several months where I felt that I was able to take on some type of responsibility again. And I decided that I was going to try college again. I had this GI Bill that was paying for school, and I'd be a fool not to use it. But I didn't want to stay up there. Part of my treatment was I really wanted to try to reconcile and repair some of the, relationships that I damaged, with my family, with my friends back home, to try to make things right. And so I decided to move back. And I started school at Rutgers. When I first got there, it was all the same feelings. And I felt again that I had made a mistake. The only difference was that now I was able to recognize what was triggering those feelings and what was affecting it, and try to look at things differently. But at the end of the day, it was a battle of will. It was just sheer willpower that really kept me in school and kept me focused on that goal, because I wanted to quit all the time. I was just looking at the time I had left in school, how many years I had left, how many classes I had left, and it just felt like the goal was so huge and unachievable. I was on campus one day and I'm walking through the student center, and there's a gentleman sitting at a table. It's like a folding table, and he's just this huge, massive guy. He's like 6'5", like all muscle pretty much, wearing a wife beater and these really short shorts. And I'm walking by and he looks at me and he's like, yeah, you want to buy some magnets, bro? And I was like, what? And I started talking with him, and I found out that he was a former Navy SEAL, and he was also, he was a student at Rutgers, and he was planning on doing a run to raise awareness for veterans issues. And I was like, okay, what are you doing, a 5K? He's like, nah. He's like, I'm running 65 miles. I was like, whoa, dude. This guy was intense. And, I said, I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. I was like, I'm not going to run with you, but I'll do what I can. And so we started to hang out, and, as we were there selling these magnets for the run and raising awareness, we started to meet other vets on campus. We started to meet other people that were in the military, and we kind of formed this little group. We formed this community, and it was all people that had, been through similar experiences, and it was great. It was just such a relief to have found that space where I felt comfortable on campus. And from that little group, we decided to form an official group, student veterans organization. We were the first one in the university system at Rutgers. We were the first student organization in the entire state of New Jersey for our generation of veterans. They decided that since I was the, quote, pretty boy, that I would be the president and the face man and spokesman, even though I was completely shy and introverted at the time. But, I looked at it as a duty. It was a duty to try to make things better. At the time, there weren't many services for veterans. And, similar to what Patrick and a lot of his fellow veterans did here on campus, we got together and we started a pretty significant advocacy campaign. We started writing editorials. We started to, talk in front of classes. We started to have meetings with administrators, with staff, and we just really started to raise awareness on why it's important that they have, specific services for veterans on campus, and why we're essentially non-traditional students. And, we weren't making much progress, so we decided that we needed to be a little more radical. We needed to take it a step further. And so we decided that we were going to confront our university president at his annual address. Rutgers is a school of 60,000 students. We went up to the address. There was 600 people in the audience. The Board of Governors, the Board of Trustees, deans, faculty, administrators, key members of the university. And we sat through an entire speech. It was about an hour and a half long, and the word military veteran wasn't mentioned once. And it was at that moment that it really solidified that we were doing the right thing. And so myself and this gentleman who was also a Navy SEAL, we wore suits and we got up on the microphone and we had a list of everywhere where they were failing us and they could be helping us. And we publicly blasted them in front of everyone. Needless to say, he was completely shocked, totally just taken off guard. After we did that, there was probably about 50 people who surrounded us, and they were just like, what can we do to help? What can we do? 5 days after that, the president formed a committee on veteran services. There was 9 of us originally on the committee. Today there is over 60. They've turned people down. We have one of the most robust veteran programs in the entire country. We have an entire house for our veterans now on campus. We have partnerships with every different department, relationships with every dean almost. We have counseling services, tutoring services, just anything you could do to help facilitate success for veterans on campus. If you had told me years ago that I would be a keynote speaker, I probably would have laughed in your face. This was not a plan for me. This was not a set out goal. This just kind of happened in my life. When we were doing advocacy work, I got involved with different student groups from other schools, and we started to collaborate. We started to do panels, and I was doing a panel one day, and there was someone from Active Minds in the audience, and they said, I really like your presentation. We want to invite you to the national conference to do this. And so I went to the national conference, and I don't know, I didn't really think too much about it. I did my presentation in shorts and flip-flops and a t-shirt. Much more rusty than what it is today, so to speak. Did the presentation, and they said, we're forming this bureau, Speakers Bureau, would you be interested in joining? And I said, no. They were like, okay, well, let us know. And I went home, and I was talking with my student group guys, and they were like, what are you, stupid? Like, what do you mean you told them no? I was like, yeah, I said, no, I don't feel like doing this. They're like, you're already doing it. This is what you do already. Like, why don't you? Like, what is wrong with you? And I was just like, I don't feel like it. I'm scared. They were like, they basically just smacked some sense into me. And so I called back, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. From that day, that was about 3 years ago. From that day till now, I've done probably 60 of these presentations. I've done dozens and dozens of panels like you saw earlier today. But the way I really look at it is I have a duty to do this. I have a duty to my fellow veterans. I have a duty to the fellow citizens of America, because this issue is more prevalent than many of you probably understand or can comprehend. There is, the statistic right now is 1 in 4 college students have some type of diagnosable mental health disorder. So just think about that. Just look around this room. 1 in 4 of you. That's a huge number. That's huge. Why are we not talking about this more? Why is this such a taboo subject? Why are there so many stigmas surrounding it? How many of you know someone who's struggling with a disorder? Raise your hand. That's a huge percentage of this room. You all probably know someone. For those of you who may be struggling with something, you owe it to yourself to get treatment. My post-traumatic stress disorder held me back in life. It prevented me from ascending to my full potential. It prevented me from being, the person that I knew I could be, that I thought I could be. By not talking about this honestly, by not viewing your situation objectively, realistically, and looking at yourself in the mirror and taking an honest assessment of what is going on in my life. Is this something that I need to look into? Is this something that I may be struggling with? Because I assure you, there's a lot of people in here that are probably relating to some of the things that were said up here, some of the things that I'm saying. This isn't something that's going to get better on its own. If you broke your leg, you would go to the hospital. You would get treatment. You would see a doctor. You would get it fixed. It's no different. There's no difference. You have a duty to yourself, to your family, to view this realistically and honestly, and to do something about it. You're holding yourselves back. By not talking about it, by judging people. This isn't helping anyone. This isn't helping our country. You guys in this room are going to be the next leaders of America. You're going to go out into your fields, you're going to rise up in them, and you're going to be leaders. And it's up to us to change the way things are. It's up to our generation. It's up to the people who put together panels like this, who brought me in. This is such an important issue. And, being able to look at it honestly You know, it's a virtue. You know, it's a strength. It's not a weakness. You know, asking for help is not a weakness. You know, it takes more strength to ask for help than it does to just cast someone out, to judge someone. Now, I just want to thank everyone who came here today, whether that was voluntarily or an obligation by some type of class, but I appreciate it either way. I want to thank everyone who organized this. You know, this is an awesome conference, and this is a huge number of people. You know, you guys are, you know, you're a force within the university. You know, all you can do is go out, try to advocate. The change is going to come from us. It's not going to come from anything other than you guys having to demonstrate some type of need, to taking the initiative and starting an advocacy campaign. You know, whether that be individually, you know, amongst your friends, amongst your little social group, you know, sororities, fraternities, classes, family, just whatever it is. You know, we have to change this conversation, because if we don't, you know, I don't want to see what that's going to look like. And so I just want to thank everyone. I appreciate you for coming out, for listening to my story, and I feel that, you know, if I was able to see myself speak years ago when I first got out of the military, I would hope that it would have an impact on me. You know, I would hope that I would be able to take something away from it that might have, you know, altered my course of thinking. So that's all I can really hope for today. I just want to thank the Veterans Center for everything you do here, for taking care of these guys. You know, there's tons of veterans here on campus. You guys have 300, you were saying? Yeah, 300 vets. You know, each of them with their own story. Each of them are just trying to move on with their lives, trying to, you know, have some type of normalcy and enjoy themselves and have a functioning, healthy life. And, you know, we're not some type of political pawn. We're not, you know, this object. You know, we're people also. You know, we've just chose to serve our country, and some of us have gone through experiences that were difficult, and now we're just trying to move on with our lives. You know, there's a lot that veterans can contribute to the classroom. You know, we have traveled the world. We have seen foreign policy in action. You know, we bring a level of maturity to the classroom, you know, a level of ambition and focus when it comes to leadership traits. And so I just want you guys to try to look at that issue a little bit differently also. So thank you guys for coming out. I'll let you get back to your lives and doing what you're doing.